Our next topic is still part of capital budgeting, but we're now going to start looking at how do we actually evaluate projects. So I'm going to start with the big picture, and then we'll get into the individual methodologies. In terms of the big picture, I think it's first important to sort of remind ourselves what we actually know, and then we'll get into what we're actually trying to accomplish. And that's going to set the stage for how we utilize, how we make decisions on what's a good investment versus what's not. So what do we know? I think there's two very fundamental ideas in finance that you probably remember actually from Micah's class. First, the timing of cash flows is very important. So when you receive cash is absolutely critical to how you view the value of that cash. Getting cash earlier is better than later. And second, we talk a little bit about discounted cash flow valuation, where the bottom line of this is that the value of a particular financial asset, whatever that is, can be found by taking the present value of all the future cash flows. So when you did bond valuation, when you did stock valuation, in both cases you projected the future cash flows and found the present value based on some required rate of return. We also know that when we're talking about corporate finance, we're concerned with three key questions. And I highlighted the one that we're working on right now, which is what long-term investment should the firm make? But we also care about how we finance them and how we manage the day-to-day cash. The ultimate goal of the firm, of financial management within the firm, is to maximize value. So when we answer the question, what long-term investment should the firm make, we should answer that question by saying, does this increase value or not? If it does, good. If it does not, then we should not go forward with the investment. So the capital budgeting decision, which we've sort of been talking about in terms of cash flows and pro forma financial statements, is really coming down to what fixed assets should we buy? Should we launch a new product line? Etc. What investment should we make? And this is sort of another name for this is called strategic asset allocation. I think the key for me is when we think about this is we're trying to think about how we create and implement growth opportunities. And I really want to emphasize the word growth here. We are trying to grow the firm. So the bottom line is, what investment should we make? And I always like to think of a very simple example that is sort of obvious, but gives you the flavor for what we're really trying to do here. Suppose you purchase a rundown house for $550,000. You hire all the workers to fix it up. You do all the work. You buy new appliances, etc. The cost of doing so is $50,000. So all told, you spent $600,000. If you can sell this house, let's say it's 1 month later, so you're only holding it for a very short amount of time. You get all the work done really quickly. And you sell the house for $625,000. What you've essentially done is made $25,000. That additional $25,000 is the increase in value. That's how you're adding value. You put in 600, you get out 25. That's the value. And so in hindsight, we could ask, was this a good investment or not? And most of you would answer, yeah, this is a great investment. In 1 month, I can earn $25,000. So we're thinking of it in that framework. However, how do we know what's a good investment today? Right. The house example is looking back. This is what I did, and I'm asking, do you think it was good or not? But now we're trying to ask, well, today I'm going to buy this house for $550,000, and if I put $50,000 in, is it a good investment or not? So there's a number of ways to evaluate the opportunities, and we're going to look at all these different ways. But in the end, you have to ask yourself as a manager, what would make a good decision? And the answer is, a good decision is a decision that will increase value today. It will add growth to my company. So we're going to figure out how to actually answer that question by utilizing these different tools. And we'll talk about each one individually. Each one has pluses, each one has some minuses, some more than others, and we'll discuss all of them. So we'll discuss these different capital budgeting methods. And the reason why we're going to discuss this list goes back to a survey that Duke University ran in 2001. They've actually continued to update this. They have a CFO panel that they continue to survey different questions about. And so I think these sort of answers have held. They basically ask CFOs, how do you evaluate investments? And these are the answers they gave. You can see a couple things here. One, you should notice these numbers don't add up to 100% because many CFOs, if not all, are utilizing more than one tool. So we're not going to, we might use NPV, we might also use payback, we might use NPV and IRR. So there's multiple tools being used. So we're going to look at all these tools. And I think when we're done, you'll notice why there's sort of three clear winners, if you will, which is NPV, IRR, and payback, and three others, discount, payback, book rate of return, and profitability index, that aren't used nearly as much. And our focus will mainly be on NPV and IRR for our capital budgeting project.